Got it. So you've been in this mid-market CNI and community solar segment for a while now. We can probably several years. Um, what can you tell us about how that market is evolving, and specifically community solar, but maybe in relation to other segments of mid-market solar as well? I mean, obviously, utility scale solar is probably still two-thirds plus of the US market, probably worldwide too, I would say. But you and I are both believers in truly distributed energy, and that we will perhaps see the long tail end of that market take off one day and be as big as the utility market, or bigger perhaps. So is that happening? What does that other third of the market look like today, and what are some trends that you're observing?
Yeah, when I think about the solar industry, especially in the US, there's utility scale, and that's the largest. There's residential, which is also pretty comparable by dollars, or at least used to be. It's been pulling back, and
Dollar
utility's
wise,
been
yeah.
taking the lead, yeah, by dollar wise. And then you've
Because
got the
it's
middle market.
3 to 4 times more expensive.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is what, yeah, yeah. And
And then you've got the middle market, which is
right.
C&I and community solar, both of which are a lot smaller. So there's about $8 billion, last year in C&I and community solar projects that got built across the U.S.
Eight
About
billion dollars. Okay, so that's what is that, like 5, 6 gigawatts or more, or what's the average?
probably more
More,
like, yeah, four or five.
four or five.
Yeah,
It's
something
still
about that.
averaging like $2 a watt, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got community solar. I estimate that to be about 3 billion of that eight, and CNI to be about five. And of community solar, I think there's 1.25 gigawatts last year, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these projects are like, two, three, maybe even more dollars per watt.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually a little higher on the build cost than the CNI side.
And how big are they, generally speaking?
Yeah, it all depends on the market. Some markets are smaller for community
Mm-hmm.
solar, and so like Vermont's kind of a nuance for a community solar market. It usually subscribes a couple of businesses, and they cap out at I think it's 500 kW AC,
Mm-hmm.
and
On
then
a
I'm
Oh, like the cap. Wow.
that's the
Okay.
cap. Yeah, so like 750 DC is kind of the standard project in
Yep.
Vermont. And then like Minnesota, I think has a 1 megawatt cap. So
Mm-hmm.
those are on the smaller end, and then you have some of the markets that are generally larger by volume that are really doing most of the activity in the community solar, at least by dollars, like New York. A lot of those projects are 6, 7 megawatts.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois as well, kind of in the same range. Typically, it's like a 5 megawatt AC cap, and
Mm-hmm.
then they load them up to be about 1.5x for DC.
And what does that project have to have in terms of attributes to qualify as a community solar project versus a 5 megawatt utility scale project?
Yeah, so let's start with what does community solar mean?
Right.
It's really a formal program that's done typically by the state,
Mm-hmm.
where multiple residential or non-residential customers can basically effectively buy a portion of the power produced by a larger site. And so the benefits are you're able to get scale. And so instead
Mm-hmm.
of you and I putting a bunch of 5, 10, 20 kilowatt projects on our house and paying $4 a watt, $5 a watt, you can do a 5 megawatt project and subscribe 200 of those people to that for $2 a watt or $1.50 a watt.
Yeah.
And so when you think
Although they're
about,
buying, they're subscribing to the kilowatt hours, the kWhs that flow out of that project, probably for a period of multiple years, or they commit for a year or more, probably at a
yeah,
time.
it depends on the program and if it's a corporate versus a residential, and some programs have constraints on this, but generally they sign up for a so many kilowatt hours or kilowatts, that'll generate production, and they'll get it at some discount, typically 10 to 20% off of their rate they would otherwise pay. And so their
And
benefit is they get a support solar energy. They don't have to necessarily put it on their roof or in their backyard, and they get a discount on their power bill. And then they typically will subscribe for, it's usually in perpetuity, and they can opt out whenever they want.
Yeah.
Some of the businesses, some of the contracts will be, they'll have some penalties depending on how much of an anchor they are and how big of a discount they're getting. But that depends on the state a little bit. So it can be a 5-year term, and then an evergreen 1-year renewals, or there's a couple different ways that can be structured.